everybody! Today I'm going to be showing you how to crochet an animal cell. I'm going to explain what each part is and its use while also showing you how to crochet it. You are going to need a crochet hook, some yarn, and some stuffing. You can use any size of yarn and hook that you'd like. I'm going to be using a 5mm hook and a size 4 yarn. You can use any colors of yarn, but multiple is recommended in order to keep each part clear. For stuffing, you can use polyester, scrap yarn, or even some beans or rice that are dried, of course. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with the cell membrane. This is the outermost layer that protects the cell from the environment and controls what is let in and what is let out of the cell. The cell membrane and the human skin are often compared because the skin and the cell membrane both protect their bodies from the environment, which can have diseases and other pathogens that may harm the inner bodies. So, the cell membrane, as well as the skin, both control what is let in and what is let out in order to make sure none of those pathogens get inside. So, the skin may let in some moisturizer or some helpful serums, but it will not let in some viruses or bacteria, which is very similar to the cell membrane as we were comparing, which will not let in any diseases or harmful pathogens into the cell, but it will let in nutrients that may help the cell. Alright, so now that we've got that covered, let's get into the crochet. So, to start our cell membrane, what we're going to do is we're going to take our yarn of choice and we're going to create what is called a magic circle. So we're going to take our yarn just like this and then wrap it around, kind of like that. On the back it looks like this, and make an X, just like that. Now on the back it looks like this, and we're going to take our hook and go under, grab this loop, pull it through. Okay. Now we've got this. There are other ways to make your magic circle, but this is just one. So now that we've got our magic circle, what we're going to do is we're going to take this, which is called our working yarn. This here is the tail. Alright, so we're going to take our working yarn and we're going to go into our magic circle, and once we're in there, okay, that's what it looks like. We're going to grab our yarn and wrap it like that. Now we're going to go ahead and pull that through. Now we have what looks like 2 loops. So now that we have that, we're going to wrap it around and go ahead and pull through 1 loop and 2 loops. Oh, I'm getting a little stuck here. Okay. So now we have what you call 1 single crochet right there. So now we are going to put 6 single crochets in here. Now that we have 1, we're going to put in another. So to make it clear, we're going to go into our magic circle. Now we're going to take our working yarn, wrap around, pull through, wrap around, and pull through. Once again, we're going to go into this circle. This is what the circle looks like. We're going to go into that circle, wrap around, pull that through. Okay, now we're going to wrap around and pull it through both of these loops. Go into our circle here. Take this working yarn, which is connected here, and wrap that around our hook. Now we're going to pull it through. Looks like that. Now wrap it and pull it through. So now let's count just to see where we're at. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now since we have 4, we need 2 more. So we're going to go in, grab that, wrap around, pull through. Go in, grab that, wrap around, and pull through. Okay, so now let's do one more check. The way you see your stitches is these little like V shapes. So this one here, this right here would be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, and then right over here, this one's kind of small, but it's 6, okay? So now that we have our 6, we're going to pull that tight. And we have our magic ring. Okay, so now that we have our magic ring, we're going to start our second round. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to go in to the first stitch that we made. That's that little one right there. And if you're unsure, you can go ahead and count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you're going to go in, you're going to go under both lines. This one's a little small, so we'll show you the next one. But you're going to go under both lines, and then once you're in there, you're going to wrap your working yarn around, pull it through that stitch. Now you have a similar thing as you did before. Wrap that around and pull through. Now, this round we're going to be doing all increases. So an increase is actually quite simple. It's going to be the same as what we were doing before in our magic ring, which is called a single crochet, but we're going to be doing it twice in one stitch. All right, so let me show you. So we already did one single crochet, but now we have this little hole, which is from our last stitch that we just did. So we're going to go back into that small hole, pull that through, wrap it around, and pull it through. Okay, so now we have 1, 2. All right. So in order to keep track of what we're doing, we should have some sort of stitch marker. I'm going to be using this, but you can use a safety pin or you can pull a piece of yarn through where you began, which would be right here, but I'm going to be using this. You can also use a suture needle or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. So since I did these two in my second round, I'm going to put this in here. Okay. Now we can move on. And we don't have to keep counting or worrying that we missed a stitch because we have the stitch marker. Okay, so we're going to go into our next stitch. Our next stitch is this V shape, if we see. And it has this opening here where we can go in, and it goes like that. Kind of looks like that. Okay, so now we're going to take our working yarn here. This is connected to the ball. Wrap it around, pull it through, and we have 2 on our hook. Now we wrap that yarn around again, pull it through both of those. So we're doing increases, so we're going to go back into that same stitch, which is the closest to the hook. It's kind of smaller since you've already been in it, and you can kind of see there. But you're going to go back in there, pull that through, wrap that around, and there you are. Okay, now we're gonna go into our next stitch, just like that. Pull that through, wrap that around, pull that through. Now we're going into the same stitch again. It's right there, if you can see. It's a little bit smaller, it's a V still. Now we're gonna go in, grab that, got it, wrap, pull through. Okay, more, goes here, wrap, and pull through. So you can go back and check your stitches just to make sure you're doing well. So we have 1 stitch here, 2 stitches. Okay, so 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7. Now, since we didn't finish off our little increase, let's go in, wrap around, pull through. Let's make sure that we have a little bit of slack so that there's not too much tension. Okay, so we're going to go into our next stitch, which looks like this. And just like that. Now we're gonna pull through our working yarn, which is this yarn here, and we're gonna wrap it around. Now we're gonna pull it through. Now, since we're doing increases, we're going to go into that same stitch, pull our working yarn through. I kind of have it wrapped around my hand, so you might not be able to see it, but it is there. It's wrapped around just to keep the tension right. Now I'm going to wrap that around there and pull it through. Okay, so now we're at that stitch where we put our stitch marker in. We're gonna go ahead and take that out, put it there. Okay, so our next stitch is the one we had our stitch marker in, so it's our last stitch. We're gonna go in there, looks like this when you're inside, and then you're gonna wrap that working yarn around, pull it through, wrap that around again, and pull it through. So now you're going to go back into that same stitch, grab that working yarn, wrap around, and pull through. Okay, so that's the end of our second round. By this round, we should have 12 total stitches. Okay, let's count to make sure. 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 stitch, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so this will be the stitch we start in on the third round. Okay, so we can go ahead and put this back in, and here we go. And now we're ready to start our third round. All right, so now we're moving on to round 3. So for round 3, we are going to do a bit of a pattern. In our first stitch here, which is this one, we're gonna go in, grab our working yarn, which is attached to here, grab our working yarn, pull it on through, wrap around, then pull it through. That is our single crochet. Now, like I said, we're going to do a pattern. So we're going to do a single crochet in one stitch, then in the next stitch we're going to do an increase, then in the next stitch a single crochet, next an increase, and so on and so forth. So we first have our single crochet. Now we're going to go into our next stitch. Oops. Pull our working yarn through, wrap that around, pull it through, okay? And like I said, we're going to do an increase in this stitch. So we're going to go into the stitch we just were in, take that, grab it, wrap it, pull it through. So right now, we've gone into 2 stitches, and we have 3, okay? So keeping up with the pattern, we're going to do just a single crochet. Grabbing that, wrapping around, pulling through. Continuing, we're going to do an increase. Grab that, pull through, wrap around, pull through. Now we're going to go into that same stitch, which is right here. Okay, now we're going to do a single crochet in the next stitch. Okay, now an increase. Now a single crochet. Oops, my goodness. Now an increase. Now a single crochet. Now an increase in the next stitch. Now a single crochet. And now we're going to take out our stitch marker, just like this. We're going to go into that last stitch, grab that, put it around, go back in because this is an increase. Okay. So now that we're done, we do have to check to make sure that we did it all correctly. So we're going to count our stitches. We should have 24 in total. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, not 24. We should have 18 in total. My apologies. So we're going to count those up. We have 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Perfect. Now we're going to put our stitch marker back in. Oh, my goodness. And get ready for our next row. Goodness. We're putting that into the stitch that we just did. Should look something like that. Okay, now for row 4. So for row 4, we're going to do a similar pattern, but not the same. Okay, so we're again going to start with our single crochet. And then instead of doing an increase right after, instead of doing an increase right after, we're going to do another single crochet into the next stitch here. Oops. Grab that, put it around, pull through. So now we have 2 stitches, and we've gone into 2 stitches, okay? So we've done 2 single crochets. Now, as we go into the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. So just do a normal single crochet, and then we're going to go right back into that same stitch. Grab it, pull that through. Okay, so now we have 4 stitches in total. We did 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, and then an increase, mixed 2 stitches. So these 2 are the increase, okay? So we're going to continue that pattern. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, increase. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, increase, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we just did our increase, so now let's go into the next stitch, grab it, wrap it around, pull it through. Into the next stitch, grab it, wrap it around, pull it through. Okay, so we've done our 2 single crochets. Now into the next stitch, we're going to do our increase. So we go in, grab that, wrap this, pull that. Okay, so since it's an increase, we're going to go back into that same stitch, which is right here. You can see right there. Okay, now we're in here. We're going to take our working yarn, wrap it, grab it. Now we're here, wrap it, and pull it through. Okay, so that was our increase. So we're going to do our 2 single crochets. 1 and 2. And then in our next stitch here, we're going to do our increase. So right there, and then go back into that stitch, around, pull through. Now we did our increase, so we're gonna go and do our 2 single crochets. 1, the next stitch over, 2. Now our increase is the next stitch over, and then into that same stitch. Okay, now 1, 2, and we're going to do an increase into this next stitch here. Okay, so into that same stitch. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we did our increase. Now we're going to go in, grab it, wrap it around. Okay. Second single crochet. Around, pull through. Okay, so now we're at the stitch marker. We're going to go ahead and take it off. And now we're going to go into that last stitch that our stitch marker was in. So that is right here. We're going to grab that yarn, wrap it around, through, and keeping up with the pattern, we're going to do an increase. So just right in there. and we should be done. Now, we're going to check our stitches, of course. We should have 24 in total, okay? So the stitches look like this, once again. Little V shape, okay? So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. All right, so we're going to go into this stitch for round 5. So now we're going to take our stitch marker, of course, and we're going to go ahead and go in there. Okay, there we go. Now let's do round 5. All right, so now we're going to start round 5. Okay, so we have our 24 stitches from last round, and we're going to do a pattern once again. So we are going to start with 1 single crochet into our first stitch there. Another single crochet, grabbing that yarn, pulling it through, wrapping it around, pulling it through. Now we have our 2. However, in this pattern, we're going to do 3 single crochets and then 1 increase, okay? So we've got our 2. Now we're just going to need 1 more. 3. Okay, and we're going to go into this stitch, and this is going to be our increase. Okay, so I did 3 single crochets, and then I did an increase, which is these 2 stitches. We're going to continue that around. 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase, and so on and so forth. So we did our increase. Now we're going to go into our next stitch, grab that. Okay, now we have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so then we're going to go into this next stitch, which is going to be our increase. Okay, now we're going to do our 3, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, make sure your yarn is staying organized. Okay, now we did our 3, so we're going to go into the next stitch, and we're going to increase. So we did 1 single crochet in there, but we got to go back into that same stitch to make it an increase. Okay, so now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to increase. So go into your next stitch, make your single crochet, and then you're gonna go back into that same stitch. Okay, so now you're gonna go 1, 2, 3, we're increasing again. So go into your next stitch. Then you're going to go into that same stitch. Okay, now you're going to do 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we're at our stitch marker once again, so we're going to go ahead and take that out. And we're going to go into that last stitch that was just where our stitch marker was and make our increase in accordance to our pattern. So we did 1 single crochet, now we go into our same stitch. Okay, now we should be done, but we're going to count our stitches, make sure we have 30. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 right here. Okay, so now we're done with that. Now we're going to go ahead, put our stitch marker back. Okay. Just back into that same stitch that we just ended on. Okay, so now we're ready for row 6. Okay, so for row 6, it's a bit simpler. So we're just going to go all the way around on each stitch doing single crochets. So instead of doing a pattern like we were on the previous 3 rows, we're going to go ahead and do single crochets all around. So we're going to start on our first stitch here, go in, wrap around, through. Then our next stitch, then our next, fourth, fifth, sixth, okay, so you're kind of just going to keep continuing around, just doing single crochets. When you're doing single crochets, when you're doing this row, you don't need to do any increases, just single crochets. So yeah, I'm going to do one more demonstration just in case, and then we'll be done. Okay, so for row 6, which is the one we're on, you're going to keep going around just doing single crochets, okay? And then we'll meet back. All right, so this is still round 6, but we just made it to our stitch marker, so we're just going to take that off. Go into that last stitch that our stitch marker was just in. Take our yarn, pull it through, and wrap around. Okay, now we're done. There should still be 30 single crochets all the way around, 30 stitches all the way around. Now, what we're going to do is for our next row, which is 7, we can go ahead and put this back into the stitch we were just in. Okay. But for the next 7 through 11 rows, what we're going to do is we're going to single crochet all the way around. So that is 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. That's 5 rows in total that are just going to be single crochets, just like we just did on row 6. Okay? So do those 5 rows and we'll meet back. All right, so we have just finished those 5 rows, 7 to 11, and it should look something like this. It's kind of like a semi-sphere, like a half sphere. And yeah, you should have your tail from your magic ring like kind of on the inside there. And yeah, once you've finished that last row, row 11, what we're going to do is we're going to fasten off so that we can begin our next part. So to fasten off, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap around with our yarn, and then we're going to pull that through our loop that's on our hook. So now we have what's called a chain, which is what we just did there. And we can just take off our hook, take some scissors, and go ahead and just cut it. It doesn't have to be very long, just like so it doesn't come unraveled. And you're just gonna do it like that. Okay, so go ahead and pull that through, tighten it, and we're just gonna tuck that in as well so that it's kind of in our little bowl that we've made. So now we have a little cell bowl, or in technical terms, our little cell membrane. Okay, so now what we're gonna do next is our cytoplasm. Okay, so now we're going to start what is called the cytoplasm. This is a jelly-like substance within the cell which keeps the organelles suspended. So think of it as, since our cell membrane is kind of like a bowl right now, since it's a half of a cell, the cytoplasm would be like jelly inside of the bowl. And our organelles, which are our like parts of the cell, those would stay on top or like suspended, as I said, in the cytoplasm. So it's keeping all of those organelles in place in order to do what they've got to do. Okay, so now that we've got that covered, let's begin. Let's begin our cytoplasm. I'm going to be using this lighter colored yarn. Again, you can choose any yarn. I do recommend to use a different color to separate it from all of the other parts that we're going to do and the cell membrane, which we just did. Okay, so we are going to be doing a very similar order of things as we just did with the cell membrane. We're going to create a magic ring with 6 single crochets and then expand on that. But we are not going to build up the walls of it like we have here, how it gets taller. We're going to keep it a flat circle so that we can connect it here. All right, so that might be a little confusing, but let's just get into it. So I created the magic ring earlier, but I want to show another way that you can do it, just in case. So we're going to start with our yarn, we're gonna twist it kind of like this. Okay, so I'll put it down so it's easier to see. You're taking the longer piece and you're just crossing it over like that. Okay, so just like this, like that, so that it looks like this. Okay, now you're gonna take this longer piece, put it over here, and you're just gonna pull that through, just like that. This is called a slip knot. Now from this slip knot, we're gonna make another form of the magic ring. Just in case you want to try it, if you want to use the same method, you can go back to the beginning and use that method if you want to. But this is just another way. So we put on the slip knot on here. To tighten it, you can pull the strings so that it fits around your hook. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 chains. So to create that, we're going to wrap that around just like that. Then we're going to pull it through our loop. That is 1 chain. Now we need 2, so we're going to wrap that around our hook and pull it through. So now we have 2 chains. If you can see, this is 1 chain, this is 2 chain, okay? So now we're going to go into that first chain that we made, the furthest from the hook, which is right here. We're going to go right in between because it's kind of similar to the stitches where it's like a V. So we're going to go right into that V, just like that, okay? Now that we're in that, we're going to just do our single crochets, which is going to be 6, just like how we began our cell membrane. So we're going to take our yarn, wrap it around, pull it through. Now we have 2, wrap it around, and pull it through. Okay, so now we have 1 stitch, we need 6, so we need 5 more. Go back into that same hole, wrap that around, pull it through, wrap it around, and pull it through. So now we have 2 stitches, 1, 2. And you can kind of see where the hole is. It's a little tiny, but it's right there. That's where our chain was. So we're gonna go into that. We're gonna take our yarn, wrap it around, pull it through, wrap it around, and pull it through. Now we have 3, so we're gonna go in, take that yarn, wrap it around, and pull it through. Now that's 4, whoops, my goodness. And then now let's do that 5. And now we do 6. Okay. Great. So now we have our magic ring. So again, this was just another method that you can do to create your magic ring. You can do the one that I did at the beginning with the cell membrane, or you can do this one. Okay, so now let's move on to round 2. Okay, so now we have our magic ring and we can move on to round 2. So we're going to take this stitch marker and we're going to put it into the last stitch that we were just in. Okay. We just did that stitch. So now what we're going to do, very similar to the cell membrane again, we're going to increase on each stitch. So what that looks like is, since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 stitches, we're increasing on every single one of them. So let's do it. We're going to go into that first stitch, grab our yarn, wrap it around, pull it through, Now, since we're increasing, we are going right back into that same stitch, grabbing our yarn, wrap it around, and pull it through. Okay, so now we're moving on to our next stitch over here. We're grabbing the yarn, wrapping around, and pulling through. Now we're going into that same stitch we just went into, grabbing that yarn, wrapping around, and pulling through. Okay, so we have done 2 increases. Now we're moving on to our next. So we're going into the next stitch, grab that yarn, wrap it around, pull it through. Since we're doing increases, let's go back into that same stitch, grab that yarn, wrap it around, pull it through. Okay, now we're moving on to the next stitch. Back into the same one. Then the next stitch. Okay. Now we are on the last stitch. So we're going to take out our stitch marker, put it aside, and we are going to go in, pull through, wrap around, pull through, go in, wrap around, pull. Okay, so we should have a total of 12 stitches, so we're going to go ahead and count those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. All right, perfect. So now we're going to go ahead and add our stitch marker back in for round 3. Okay, so for round 3, what we're going to do is just like with our cell membrane, we are going into the first stitch with a single crochet. Just one, and then we're going to go into our next stitch with an increase. So we're going to go back into that same stitch. Okay, so the pattern is going to be 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, 1 increase, and so on. So you are just going to continue that. So we have our increase here. Our next one will be a single crochet. Now our next will be a increase. Go back into that stitch. A single crochet. Remember, we are going into the next stitch here, taking our yarn, pulling it through, wrapping around, and pulling it through. Going in, pulling it through, wrapping around, pulling it through. Since this is an increase, going in to the same stitch, doing another crochet. Then we're doing 1, then we're doing an increase. Then we're doing 1, then an increase, then 1. And now we're at the end of our round, so we're going to go ahead and take out our stitch marker, put it aside. Now we are going into our last stitch, which is going to be an increase. Okay, now we should be done. We should have 18 stitches in total. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Great. So now we're going to put this back in for row 4, I believe. Okay, so row 4, we are going to do a pattern just like the last one, except it's a little different. So we're going to do 2 single crochets, like that, then go into the next one, and then in the next stitch here, you're gonna do an increase. Go into that same stitch. Okay, good. Now we're gonna go into the next stitch. 1, 2, now go in, this one's an increase, go back into that stitch, one, 2, now go back into that stitch. Oops, no, I didn't mean go back in. You're gonna go to the next stitch, and now you're gonna go back into that stitch, because that's the increase. My bad. Okay, now you're gonna go in to the next stitch. 1, then the next one. Now the next. And in this one, you're gonna increase. Okay, so now 1 and 2. Now an increase. Go back in. Okay, so now you're gonna do 1 and a 2. And now you're gonna go into here with an increase. Okay, so now we should have a total of 24 stitches. So we're gonna go ahead and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Okay, very good. So now we're going to take our stitch marker and do row 5. Okay, so for row 5, we are going to do 3 single crochets. So go into that first stitch, single crochet, second stitch, single crochet, third stitch, single crochet. Then this next stitch we're going to do an increase. So we're going to go back in. Now 1, 2, 3, and then in this next stitch we're going to increase. Go back into that stitch. Okay, so now we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4. Now in this next stitch we're doing an increase, so we're gonna go right back in. Okay, now we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, back in. Oops. Nope. Now in the next stitch here, oops. Okay. We just did 3 single crochets, so the next thing we're gonna do is an increase. So go into your next stitch, and then in here. Okay. So now 1, 3. Now we're gonna go ahead and increase. Gonna go back in. Okay. Now we're gonna go to the next one. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now we're gonna take out our stitch marker. And we are going in, through, okay. And that was our last stitch there. Now we're gonna do something a little interesting. So like I said, we're going to take this and attach it to this. But in order to do this, we're gonna have to do something a little interesting. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna make sure that these are tucked in, and then we're going to place this on top of here. You can put the tail here inside of the little bucket. Okay. And yeah, I'll be back to explain how to attach. Okay, So in order to attach this, what we're going to do is we're going to do slip stitches all the way around. So what that's going to look like is we're going to take our cell membrane and attach it to here, kind of like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but what we're going to do is we're going to go into the stitch that is close to where you would go in if you were still working it. So we're going to go into this stitch. This is where we finished. We're going to go into this stitch. Okay. So on the other side, what that's going to look like is this one. So we're going to just go into there. We're going to take our working yarn, kind of get all those tails out of the way. I know they can kind of be confusing. You can just put them inside the cup that we made. And you're going to take your tail, your working yarn, my apologies, and you're going to wrap that around what you've got. So just wrap it in a way that works for you and pull it through. That might not have been the best, but let me show you in the next one. Okay. So we're going to go into this next stitch on our cytoplasm, and we're going to go into the next stitch on our cell membrane. So it kind of looks like this. Now we're going to wrap that around and pull it through everything. Absolutely everything, okay? Just like that. We're going to continue doing that. So what that looks like is we're going to go into our next stitch on the cytoplasm, and then we're going to go into our next stitch on the cell membrane. So that'd be right here, because we already have it going through there. So the next stitch available. So we're going to take our yarn, pull it through both, wrap that around again, oops, that around again, pull it through. So we're kind of like, it's kind of like sewing it together, but crocheting it together. Okay, so we're gonna go to our next stitch, which is right here. Our next stitch on the cytoplasm. Now we're going to find our next stitch on the cell membrane, just right here. Go ahead and pull that through, and pull it through the one that's on our hook. Oh. If it falls off, that's okay. Just put it back on and go ahead and pull it through. Okay. So now you're gonna push through the next stitch on here, the next stitch on your cell membrane. Now you're gonna take this, wrap it around, pull through, and pull through. Once again, you're gonna go in, then you're gonna go in on the next stitch here. Oops. You want to make sure that you're getting both of the sides of the V of the stitch. Gonna wrap around, pull through, and pull through. Okay. So you're going to continue like this all the way around. I'm going to demonstrate one more time, but come back when you have like a pocket kind of like this, where everything is closed around, but there's like still a pocket here. Okay, don't close it up completely. Just leave some space and come back and I'll explain. But let me demonstrate one more time just so that it's clear. We're gonna go into the next stitch, the next available stitch on our cytoplasm, then the next available stitch on our cell membrane. And through all of that, we're going to take our working yarn and pull that through. Now we're gonna pull it through this. Okay, and you're gonna continue like that all the way around. Just leave a pocket open for stuffing, and I'll be back. Okay, so I went around basically all of it, but we're leaving this little pocket open for stuffing. So you can, of course, use any stuffing you want. You can use the scraps, you can use this polyester that I'm going to be using. But basically, we're just going to stuff it. So you can take a little bit at a time, just so that it doesn't get confusing. And you just kind of put it in there. You want to fill out the round part here, our cell membrane. And we are going to not fill it up completely because that would make our cytoplasm go up. And we don't really want that. We want it to be as flat as possible so that it's like a split down the middle of an animal cell. So just like that. And we kind of have like a little plush now. So you're going to stuff it, and then you're going to just continue closing it up like you were before. So once it's stuffed, I'm gonna add a little bit more. Okay. So now we're just going to keep closing it up. You can add like more or take out some, like depending on how it's looking and how you think it's representing the cell. So go ahead and pull that through, just like that. Okay, so I am liking how it's looking. It's got my cell membrane, which is protecting everything, and then it's got the cytoplasm, which will keep everything suspended. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this up and be back. Okay, so I just got to the last stitch here, and what we're gonna do is we're just going to fasten off like we did before. going to chain and then take our scissors and cut it. Okay. Now pull it through. And for this, we don't really have anywhere to just like tuck it away like we did for the ones that were inside the bowl. But what we can do is take a like sewing needle. It doesn't have to be sharp. This is like this is a dull one. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your yarn and take this just get it on there. Then you can go ahead and just push it into the sew. Okay. Once it's in there, you can go through a few more times to secure it, but you can just cut it off kind of close. Pull it a little bit and then cut it so that it goes back in. You can squish it around so that it goes back in by itself. And now you have the base to your sew. We have our cell membrane, which is protecting our cell. And we have our cytoplasm, which is going to have all of our organelles on top of it. All right. So let's show you how to do those. Okay, so we're going to do the nucleus now. This is an organelle in the cell that protects all of your DNA. It holds it all in there, and the DNA is kind of what makes you you. The traits that you have, like if you have brown eyes or blonde hair or anything, the DNA is a mix between the parental genes, and this DNA gets wrapped up in neat little chromosomes. So chromosomes are like compacted DNA, and this compacted DNA resides in the nucleus. So the nucleus is what is holding all of this information that tells the cells what they should be doing, what you should be looking like. All right, so now let's get into it. Okay, so for the nucleus, it is pretty simple, very tiny. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our magic ring again. You can do either the method that I did in the beginning or the one that I did for the cytoplasm. I'm going to be doing the one that I did for the cytoplasm rather than the one that I did for the cell membrane. But you can do either one you'd like. So I'm gonna make my slip knot. And I'm gonna put this here. Make my 2 chains. 1 and 2. Now I'm gonna go into this chain, pull through, wrap around. That's 1. 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6. Okay, so this is what our nucleus is looking like. Now let's look at what we have for our cell. We have our nucleus now, so that is going to go onto our cell. Now we have to finish this off. So in order to make sure that this stays neat, what we're going to do is we're going to do a slip stitch. So we're going to go into our first stitch here, the first one that we made, and make a slip stitch. So, my goodness, having a little difficulty. Okay, so go in to that first stitch you made. Okay, wrap around, pull through, and pull through. That's our slip stitch. So now what we're gonna do is we are just going to tie off. We're not going to knot it this time. Okay, so just cut that off. Okay. So now we have our tiny circle, which is our nucleus. Okay. So now we are going to attach them. Okay. So in order to attach this, we are going to first cut off this tail that we had from making our magic ring. So not the one that we just cut off, but the one right at the bottom here that already is kind of connected and doesn't really need to be that long. So we're not going to cut it all the way down because that could cause it to unravel. We're just going to kind of cut it shorter so that we can hide it underneath. Okay. So now we have a little bit more neat circle, and we are going to put it right kind of off center over here. Okay. So how we're going to do that is we are going to take our needle here and put it through. The way that I put it through is I take it and I fold it and I make it flat, and then I kind of like shimmy this on it. Okay. You don't really have to knot it. It'll probably stay on, and if it doesn't, you could just put it back on, so it's okay. All right, so how you're gonna do this is you're going to go into our cytoplasm to the side. So we're gonna go into right here. Okay. Now we're gonna go into the next stitch of our nucleus. And we're gonna go into the next stitch of our cytoplasm. And we're gonna move so that we can go nicely into the next stitch. You can't be entirely specific with this. It's more about, because it's not, nucleus aren't always in the same place. Because cells, they do have a certain order, but they aren't particularly in the top right corner, you know? So you can just kind of follow this construction, this one a little loosely. So you're just gonna go in like this. Okay. Now that we have gotten to all of the stitches of the nucleus, we did 6, and we connected them all to the cytoplasm, we can go ahead and just push this through so that it is secure. And we're going to go through this cell again just to make sure that it's secure. We don't want this to be too tight, so you can pull it up a little bit. And we're just going to go through the cell again, just like across. It doesn't have to be specific. Now you're going to take your scissors and cut. Now squish it around to make it disappear. Okay. So now we have our nucleus attached right there. Okay. So now that we have a cell, we're going to continue making the organelles so that it's a full cell. As full as a half a cell can be. Okay, so the next organelle we're going to be creating is the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is considered to be the powerhouse of the cell. This means that it creates the energy used by the cell for all of its processes. So within a cell, it's similar to a human body where there are a lot of things going on, like digestion and fighting off diseases. All of that needs energy. The energy created in the mitochondria is called ATP. This is created in the mitochondria and they distribute it around in order to do all the processes. So now we are going to create the mitochondria. Okay, so making the mitochondria, it's going to be very simple because it's a super tiny organelle. It's like a little oval. So I chose this kind of like brighter color so that I can recognize that it's like giving off all this energy, like how light like gives off energy, so it's really bright. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, I'm going to do a slip knot, which is like this, just like that, so it should look like that. And now we're going to take this, pull it through. Now we're going to take this tiny tail, just pull it through. Okay, now pull it tight using both. Okay, not too tight so that you can still get in between it like that. Okay, now we're going to wrap it around. 1 and 2. And we are going to do a 3, but this one we are going to cut it off around here. And that is going to kind of turn into our knot so that we kind of have this shape here. Okay, you're going to create one more of these because there are multiple mitochondria in the cell. Okay, so just create one more of these and we'll be back to attach them. Okay, so in order to attach these, what we're going to do is we're going to take our needle again and we are going to attach these. So we can cut off one of these ends. Doesn't have to be right up close because that will make it unravel, but just kind of like around there, just so that it's out of the way. Okay, so now that that is done, what we're going to do is we're going to take this we're going to attach our yarn to our needle. Okay. And now we are going to put this on there. So we're just going to slide it in to the cytoplasm. Okay. And we're going to, you kind of like make like a space for it, and then you're going to go right back in. So that it's nice and attached. You can so that it kind of looks like a little oval. Now what we're gonna do is just like how we did with the nucleus. You're just gonna push it through and then make sure it's not too tight. Now you're gonna cut it off. Okay. Now you're going to attach the other one in the same way. They don't have to be in any particular area, kind of just like you can put them on the sides. And it's all good. So I'll be back and I'll have that attached and then we'll start the next organelle. Okay, so for our next one, we are going to be doing a vacuole. This is an organelle in the cell that stores food, water, or waste in the cell. It's like a big storage container. So in the animal cell, there are a few vacuoles. They're kind of small. In a plant cell, there's like usually one large vacuole. But today, since we are doing an animal cell, we're going to have a few small vacuoles. So I'm going to make a slip knot. Then I'm gonna go up 3, and I'm gonna go down to the second one, the one in the middle. And I'm gonna make single crochet. Okay, so vacuoles are usually a more abnormal shape, so I thought this could fit since it kind of goes a little wacky. So we are going to only do one vacuole because that is possible in animal cells. And yeah, we are going to tie this off. So we're gonna do this and cut it. Okay. So now we have our little vacuole. You can't really see it too well, but it's a little vacuole. Our cell's storage container. So I'm going to show you how to connect it. Okay, so for this one, we're gonna go ahead and cut off this side here where we started. You can tell that it's where you started because it has a really tight knot there. And where we ended, we made a looser knot. Okay, so you're just gonna cut it off, right, kind of close. And then you're gonna take your needle flatten out your yarn. Okay. So the vacuole, again, it can go kind of wherever. I'm gonna put it kind of over here. And we're just going to connect it how we did the others. And make sure it's not going to fall off. So that should be good. Now we're going to go in to the cell, pull it through. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead and cut this off. Squish it so it goes back in, and you have your vacuole. Okay. So the next organelle that we're going to be working on is lysosomes. So a lysosome takes out any foreign bodies that might otherwise harm the cell. So it's kind of like the fighter of the cell, a warrior, if you will. So they will go near any foreign bodies and absorb them. Take them in on their own so that the rest of the cell does not have to deal with it. This could end up taking out the lysosome completely, but it does save the rest of the cell. So let's get into this. So I chose red for this lysosome because I feel like since it's like a warrior, and red is a very strong color, I guess. I think that will also help with, recognition. So we're going to do our lysosome now. So for our lysosome, this one is super duper simple. We are just going to do one single crochet, and then we are going to just tie off. So just cut this loose and pull this through. Okay, so it might look small, but it is mighty. So now we are going to attach it. Okay, so in order to attach this, what we're going to do is we're going to, again, cut off where we began, just to make things easier for us. And going to cut kind of close to it, but not on it. Now we take our needle and go ahead, attach it. Now, again, you can attach this anywhere. I'm gonna do it like kind of near our little mitochondria. Just like in the corner here. Gonna pull it through there. So this one is really small, so you've got to make sure that you don't pull it through. Just make sure you're pulling through the excess string. And then to secure it so that it doesn't fall through, you're gonna go back through like this. Just like that. Oops. Okay. So it kind of looks like this. And then we're just going to go around again to make sure that it's really intact. Since it's so tiny, we want to make sure that it doesn't fall apart. But after that, we can go ahead and pull it through, just like the rest. Okay, now it's a little tiny nub. Okay, and if you want to secure that more, you can go ahead and put it through the cell again. I'm gonna do that just because it's a shorter string and I don't want it to come loose. Okay, so now we're gonna pull it a little bit and cut her off. Now we're all ready. Okay, so far we've got our mitochondrion, we've got our vacuole, we've got our lysosome, and we've got our nucleus. So let's keep going. The next organelle we are going to be doing is the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus transports materials for the cell's use all throughout. And it is often compared to a Wi-Fi symbol due to its structure where it's like little lines. But yes, it is used to transport materials and things like nutrients throughout the cell in order to help with processes. Okay, so to make the Golgi apparatus, we are going to be creating that Wi-Fi symbol shape. So we're going to start around here. We're just going to go through, just like this. Okay. Then we're going to go back over so that it appears. And we're going to bring our needle over there, which is a little farther from our original spot. Okay, so now we have our first line. Now we're going to make our second line, which will be a little bit longer, so we're gonna go like over here. And then our last line can start like here. This part's not attached, it's just the excess. And then our last line is gonna start. I don't know if I like it starting there. Let's move it over here. My apologies. Okay, so now we're gonna move it, and it's right here. So once we get to our last line, we're gonna go right back up to where we began. Now we're going to pull these out a bit so that they're not too tight. And then we're going to cut these. Doesn't have to be super long or short. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna knot them together. Okay, and now we are going to cut them kind of short, and then you can use whatever you'd like to push it into the cell. Just so that it's out of the way. Okay, so now we have our Golgi apparatus, which is kind of like a little Wi-Fi symbol where there's like a smaller part and then it gets bigger and bigger. So yes, we have our Golgi apparatus, our lysosome, our nucleus, our vacuole, and our mitochondrion. Only a little bit more to go. Our next organelle is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So this organelle focuses on the synthesizing of lipids. Now, this is important because our cell membrane here is made up of lipids, phospholipids to be exact, and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is what synthesizes these and makes sure that the cell membrane stays intact. So now let's see how to make it. Okay, so to make our smooth endoplasmic reticulum, we're going to do something similar to the Golgi apparatus, just because it is in like kind of lines, but it's a little bit more sporadic when it comes to the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So it'll be a little less organized and more connected between the lines. So let's give that a go. We're going to connect it to our needle here. Okay. Now we are going to go on in just like that. Okay. Make sure we don't have too much tension here. Okay, now we're gonna go in here, right back through. Now we're gonna go into like the middle of our little thing here, our line, and we're gonna connect it to our next line. And we're gonna make another one here. And we're gonna make this a little bit thicker. Okay. Gonna go on up here. Make sure we're pulling through the end. And I think I'm gonna make another one up here. Okay. Now we're just gonna connect this here. Now we are going to kind of just make sure that none of it is too tight. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and tie it. Well, I think I'm gonna add just one more line. Just to connect these two. Go through here. Now we're gonna go right back through to where we began in order to tie it off. Okay. Alright, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to cut it here. Now we're going to tie it. Okay. Oops. And we're gonna cut it a little bit smaller. And now we're gonna take something to push it in. Okay. Now it's a little cleaner. We're going to make sure that this is good. And that's our smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so the next organelle we're doing is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So this one is kind of like the sister to the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. This one focuses more on protein synthesis. And this basically means that it will synthesize proteins that are later going to be incorporated into the cell membrane or other organelles. It basically, it folds proteins, and it also modifies them and transports them throughout the cell. So something to be mentioned here is that the rough endoplasmic reticulum is rough because it includes another organelle. This organelle is ribosomes. Ribosomes also synthesize proteins. So they kind of work together in that, and the ribosomes are attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, making it rough. So ribosomes are actually scattered around the cell, but they are also attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So we are going to make the rough endoplasmic reticulum as well as add in our ribosomes around. Okay. So in order to make our rough endoplasmic reticulum, we are going to follow very similar to what we did for the smooth, where we did like connected lines. But we are of course going to add on our ribosomes. So first we are going to attach our yarn right here. Pull through. Okay. Now we are going to start making it. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make a little line here. Gotta make sure that you have enough yarn to do what you want to do, because where it cuts off here, that's where it ends. So now we're gonna go in. Okay. Oops. What's this loop? Oh, okay. So this just got caught up underneath, but that's okay. You just pull it through and it's alright. So now you're just going to do some lines, very similar to the Golgi apparatus and of course the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Now we're going to attach a line between this one and this one. Okay. And going to make okay, so we're just going to touch it there. Now we're going back through. Okay, so some of them are a little too tight, so we're just gonna pull them out a little bit. Okay, so now you are going to cut this off. And you are going to tie it. I'll cut it a little bit shorter. And we're gonna stuff that in. So now just gonna squish it around a little bit. Okay. Now, next we are going to add our ribosomes around. Okay, now we are going to add on our ribosomes. So these are actually going to be very, very simple. So we're actually going to just make a strip here. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the end of this and we're gonna knot it. You want it to be very close to the tip, as close as possible. Oops, sorry. Okay. So now we have a little knot. And now we're going to reinforce it with another knot. Okay, that is going to be our ribosome. So now we are going to take the other end, put our needle through. Okay. And since we are still working on the ruff, we're going to first finish off the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So we're going to go ahead and put some ribosomes on there. So we're going to start with this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to go all throughout the cell to make sure that this guy stays in place. Then we're going to go ahead and cut her off. Okay. So for the rough endoplasmic reticulum, you can make like 2 more ribosomes, and then you can add a few around, like 1 or 2 more for the endoplasmic reticulum, and then you can add a few around. So make like just like a few more, maybe like 4, and I'll come back to show you how many I made and where I put them. Okay, so I added some more ribosomes. I added a couple more onto the actual rough endoplasmic reticulum. And I also added some just that are floating around in the cytoplasm. But yeah, this is the finished product. We have our cell membrane, which, if you remember, is like the skin of the cell. It protects from the environment and controls what is let in and what is let out. Now, if we look back up, we have our cytoplasm, which is this white color. which is a jelly-like substance, and it keeps the organelles suspended, keeps them up and being able to work and move. We also have our nucleus, which has our DNA, our traits, the things that make us us. We also have our endoplasmic reticulum, which we just did. This smooth one helps with synthesis of lipids, which helps out our cell membrane. And then we have our rough endoplasmic reticulum, which synthesizes proteins and gives protein to all of our organelles and cell membrane. And we have our Golgi apparatus, which transports materials all around for the cell's use, like nutrients. Then we have our mitochondria, which is the powerhouse. They create all of the energy used by the cell. Then we have our ribosomes, of course, which synthesize our proteins, just like our rough endoplasmic reticulum. Then we have our lysosome right here, which takes away all of that bad foreign bodies that we do not want in the cell. And then we have our vacuole, which holds food, water, or any waste in the cell. Anyways, that is it. I hope you found this educational or fun. All right, have a great day. Bye.